Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... With the book that I'm reviewing this weekend, I actually have some emotional ties to it, which the main reason why is because I had purchased this book last year when Carrie and I were on our honeymoon. And since we weren't able to celebrate our wedding anniversary the way that we had hoped because of coronavirus this year, I was able to go back to this book, pick it up, and reminisce about the good memories that we had made. Now, another thing that makes me feel emotionally attached to this book is the subject matter in regards to Bigfoot. And this actually takes me all the way back to my childhood when I was around 7 or 8 years old, and I was becoming a seasoned horror fan with movies that were like PG and PG-13. So one Friday night when my mom and dad decided to pull out their copy of The Legend of Boggy Creek, I was really surprised that this G-rated classic would be the movie to scare the hell out of me. Which I think the main reasons why is because prior to seeing this movie, I had had an experience, and I wouldn't talk about that experience until I became an adult, which I'll talk about that experience after I review the book here. And another reason why is because this was the first movie I had ever seen where it felt like I was watching actual footage and nothing was staged. And also, the movie takes place in the woods, and I grew up living in the woods. So, there you go. Well, after watching that, let's fast forward into my adulthood, and Carrie comes into my life, and we have started dating at this point. So, we're getting to know what each other likes, and this is when the subject of ghosts, aliens, and cryptoids come up, which we discovered that we both had a fandom for. And this was when I asked him if he had ever seen The Legend of Boggy Creek, because with that being a Bigfoot movie, in my opinion, that's like the top Bigfoot movie out there. Everything else just goes beneath it. And when he said that he had never seen it before, I had to show him the movie because he just couldn't go another day without seeing it. And, of course, he became a huge fan. So we fast forward to about 5 years later where we get married, and we had the plans to do our honeymoon in this order, where we go to Hot Springs, Arkansas. After that, we go to Texarkana. Then we go to Falk, Arkansas, and last we finish up our honeymoon in Shreveport, Louisiana. Which our main reason for going to Falk, Arkansas is because that's where they have the Monster Mart, and also Falk is where they filmed The Legend of Boggy Creek. So when we got to the Monster Mart, which is like this gas station museum that has a lot of Bigfoot and The Legend of Boggy Creek memorabilia, like, I just went crazy in there. I slammed down money left and right for books, movies, t-shirts, the whole 9 yards. And the book that I'm reviewing this weekend, which is The Beast of Boggy Creek, The True Story of the Falk Monster by Lyle Blackburn, I had not read it until recently, and going into this book, I had some very high expectations, and I have to say that the book did not disappoint, because it has some really good information in there surrounding the movie of The Legend of Boggy Creek. It also gives some backstory on Arkansas history in regards to having the wild men and stuff like that in the woods. So there was a lot of stuff in here that was fun. It was stuff I had not heard of before. And I really liked how the author presented these events without trying to make you believe they were true or false. He just presented them, and it was up to you to make your mind up. But without me rambling on anymore, let's go in and get down to the book review and see what happens when you visit Boggy Creek. The Beast of Boggy Creek, The True Story of the Falk Monster by Lyle Blackburn is about a Sasquatch-like creature that eventually becomes known as the Falk Monster. And even though eyewitness reports date back as early as the 1940s, we discover that when the Spaniards had visited this area, they had learned from local indigenous tribes about wild men that roamed about the woods. And if you're a fan of the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, The book does a good job in sorting between fact and fiction, especially when it comes down to the Crabtree and Ford families. But aside from them, we do gain other eyewitness accounts that the movie didn't cover, some of which are current. Although reports of the Fawk Monster were made to local officials in the 1940s, none of those were widely reported at that time. Instead, the first media coverage about the Fawk Monster appeared in the Texarkana Gazette in 1971. After that, other Arkansas papers began printing about the creature. Still, the name the Fawk Monster didn't stick until it gained nationwide attention, where the reporter named Jim Powell branded the creature with that title. Once the public learned about what lurked around Fawk, bounties were issued. One in particular was from a history instructor in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, who believed that the Fawk Monster was a part of Arkansas heritage, and for this reason they should raise money to capture and preserve the beast. The most famous encounter with the Fawk Monster was when 14-year-old Lynn Crabtree saw it while squirrel hunting. After seeing it, Lynn ran home and told his family what happened, and there would have been a good chance his story never would have left his home, except that day the Crabtrees had company, and it was that company who spread the story, and while Lynn was greatly ridiculed for his encounter, others eventually stepped forward with stories that regarded the same creature. Fun facts. Here's a few things that you might not know about the legend of Boggy Creek and Lyle Blackburn. With the sensational response that the legend of Boggy Creek received, it is one of the most successful DIY movies ever made, as it banked in at $25 million with a shoestring budget. Other examples of successful DIY movies include The Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity. Also, The Legend of Boggy Creek was the directorial debut of Charles B. Pierce. His drive for making this movie was his having followed the newspaper articles on the beast and wanting to capitalize on that subject. The end result was, many people who saw The Legend of Boggy Creek as a child credit it for being their gateway drug into cryptozoology, or more specifically, Bigfoot hunting. And in The Beast of Boggy Creek, Lyle Blackburn cites the movie for having been influential on him upon seeing it as a child. Which Lyle Blackburn has written books on Momo, the Lizard Man, and multiple titles on the Fawk Monster. Also, he has narrated documentaries not only on the Fawk Monster, but also Mothman. Aside from writing and monster hunting, Blackburn is the lead singer of Ghoultown, which falls under the categories of psychobilly and horror punk. Since we have that covered, it's now time to move on to the spoiler section. And if you haven't read this book before, I'm going to speak about a few things that could ruin the experience for you. So if you would like to skip this section, just scroll down to the comments and you'll see that I have a pinned comment at the top. If you were to click on the timestamp within that comment, it will direct you away from the spoiler section and bring you to the Thoughts chapter. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this, so ready, set, go! Since everyone has had the opportunity to click away, I'd like to talk about one of my favorite moments in this book. And this is where the author speaks about the different theories that surround the Fawk Monster. And I might forget one or two of these theories, but these are the ones that really stood out to me the most. Which the first one was known as the crazed redneck theory. And pretty much this is where people didn't believe stories about the Fawk Monster because they assumed that they were created by uneducated rednecks who lived in the backwoods. Well, as the book has shown us from beginning to this point, a lot of the people who had seen the Fawk Monster were those who had a strong reputation, and if word had gotten out that they had seen this creature, they could have lost everything. So, yeah, that wasn't the case whatsoever. Now, the second theory was known as the moonshiner theory, and this was the idea that you had a group of moonshiners who had created tall tales about this fictional beast, so it would keep people off of their property and away from their stills. Well, if that was the case, it totally backfired, because once word got out to surrounding towns and such, Falk was flooded with nothing but people who were trying to hunt down the monster, so we had a lot of destruction, and we also had a lot of trespassing. So if that was the case, it didn't work. And the third theory was known as the circus train wreck theory. And this is the idea that a train had wrecked nearby, and it was carrying all of these circus animals and equipment, and 3 monkeys had escaped from the train and were living out in the woods. Well, it comes to be that there actually was a train wreck in Arkansas, like in the 1920s, where you had 3 monkeys that did escape from it, but that was like about 100 miles north of Falk, and there are big differences in between what people had seen and also the anatomy of those monkeys. So yeah, that is something that just would not have worked. And the fourth theory is one that I remember hearing about when I was a kid, and I had seen The Legend of Boggy Creek, which is the panther theory. And this is the idea that the Falk monster was a panther this whole time. And I really easily discredited that theory because there are so many major differences between the anatomy of a panther and how this creature walked upright, how it seemed human, and there was just so much in comparison where the two were these completely opposite beings. And the final theory was known as the sundown town theory, which, if you don't know what a sundown town is, this was during extremely racist times where if you were a person of color and you were in this town, you had to be out of that town by the time night fell, because if you were still in that town after sundown, you would be the victim of a hate crime. So people think that maybe the monster was created by story just to keep people of color away from the town, but the author did the extra research here and saw that there was never any type of racial laws that were on the books for Falk, Arkansas. So that was also discredited. And I can't remember what the other 2 theories were. I think there were 2 more. But I really like how the author took the time to present these and go into detail about the subjects. And he does it in a way that really allows the reader to make up their mind on what they believe. So yeah, I really did appreciate this scene. And since I really don't have anything to add into this about character development, sorry, we're not going to have a tea time. I thoroughly enjoyed The Beast of Boggy Creek, and aside from the information it provided, I felt like the author did a good job with writing the book, and I felt like he did a great job with organizing everything, such as he ends up showing us the history of Falk, Arkansas, then he gives us the eyewitness accounts of those who had seen the Falk monster. And because of him using this method, it makes it feel like the book has a good direction to it versus just being scattered all over the place. And I very much appreciated how the author didn't try to force on his readers to believe in the Falk monster or not believe in the Falk monster. Instead, he used an approach where it really felt like he was doing nothing more than documenting. So I very much did appreciate him being able to stay unbiased. Now, as far as the movie is concerned, I know that I've mentioned in this video a lot about the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek. If you've seen the movie, this is a great companion book to that movie because it does give you a lot more information than what the movie ever covered. And if you've never seen The Legend of Boggy Creek before, you can still read this book and understand everything that the author is talking about without there needing to be a reason to having seen the movie. However, I do recommend at some point you watch the movie because it feels so very iconic. Now, at the end of the day, the book didn't scare me, but there were a few scenes that did creep me out. And I really did find where I felt sorry for the Beast, because for the most part, it seems like the Beast is just as scared of us as we are of it. Out of the 3 nonfiction books that I read this November, The Beast of Boggy Creek is honestly the best of the 3. I mean, it's fun, it's well written, and it also allows the reader to make up their own mind to if this is true or false, rather than having someone saying, "Oh yeah, believe everything you read." That's not what you're going to get with this book. It's honestly going to document and allow you to make up your own mind, so I do appreciate that. And if you have a teenager who is interested in getting into cryptozoology, or they are interested in Bigfoot in general, then this is really a good book to start them with because it is an easy read and it's not explicit. And yeah, of course, at the end of the day, I do highly recommend this book because it was just absolutely fun to read. On to the questions. Now, this doesn't matter if the book is fiction or nonfiction, but what is a horror book you would recommend about Bigfoot? Load up the comments. My second question is, have you ever encountered something that you couldn't explain? So, with myself, I said at the beginning of this video that I had a story to tell, and I feel like this is one of the reasons why The Legend of Boggy Creek scared me as bad as what it did, because this happened to me prior to seeing the movie. But instead of you having to look at me as I'm telling the story, I'm about to take you into the bedroom where I was when I saw this happen. So this is the spare bedroom at my grandmother's house and where I used to sleep when I would visit my grandparents on the weekend. But this is the window where I actually had my encounter. So it was 1990 or 1991. I can't remember the year exactly, but I was 5 years old and we had my first ice storm. And since my parents' trailer was electric and we had lost electricity due to the storm, we went to my grandparents' home that still had a gas furnace. Well, on the first night of the power outage, Mom, Dad, and myself were sleeping in the bed that you just saw, and I was sleeping between them. But at some point in the night, I woke up to use the bathroom, and after I used the bathroom and came walking back to the bed, I looked out this bedroom window. And even though there were no lights, the moon was bright enough where I was able to see everything under it because of the snow and ice. Which, it was at this time that I noticed the silhouette of something tall and emaciated limp out from the corner of the garage that you see to the right of this screen. And the thing is, it walked upright the entire time with bristled fur. But instead of me screaming, I just stood there and watched it as it limped across the yard in a straight line between the pine trees that you see here. Then it disappeared down the hill to the road that is located to the left of the screen, and although it scared the hell out of me, I was too scared to make a sound. So after it was gone, I ended up crawling back in bed and hid under the covers between my parents. And this encounter was something that I wouldn't speak about until 2.5 decades later when I attended a convention panel about the unnatural. And to this day, I honestly don't know what I saw, and it was the only time in my life I had ever seen it. So I don't know if it was a Sasquatch. I do believe in Bigfoot, but I just honestly don't know what it was that I saw. For all I know, it could have been a trespasser in a fur coat or something, but my mind continues playing that scene over and over, and it just did not look like that. It looked like something that honestly wasn't human. And I'll probably never know what this thing was, and that's just something I'll have to deal with, but that still creeps me out from time to time. Well, that's my story, and if you have a story that you would like to share as well, feel free to do so. Also, anyone who decides to be a troll about this will be removed, so this will be a pretty safe place for you to be able to share your experiences. But with that said, it's now time for me to move on to this weekend's meme, which if you would like to contribute to next weekend's meme, just go to the description section of this video and befriend me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, because what I'll do is I'll upload an image on one of these platforms, and if you would like to add a caption to that, feel free to do so, and I'll give you a shout out here. Instead of picking a perverted caption like how I've done over the last few weekends, I decided to go with a caption that was true to Thanksgiving. And this is, uh-oh, them deviled eggs are coming back to have a chat. And this was contributed by Chris Kopeski from Facebook, and I would just like to say thank you for watching and thank you for contributing. Well, since we have all that covered, it's now time to close out the video. And before I do, I'd like to say thank you to Lisa G and J.L. Mulvihill, which J.L. Mulvihill is a young adult fantasy author, and if you would like to check out her books, they're available in print, ebook, and audiobook, so be sure to check those out wherever books are sold. And if you're wondering why I'm giving a shout out to these wonderful people, it's because they've had the opportunity to contribute to my Patreon account. And if you would like to contribute as well, all you have to do is go to the description section of this video, click on the link that I provided for my Patreon, and for $5 a month I'll give you a shout out. If you would like to do the $10 tier that I have available, you'll still get the shout out, but I'll also provide you with one photo at the beginning of every month. And I do creepy photography on the side, so it'll definitely be a creepy image. And after you receive it, you can print it off, do whatever you like. And if you are unable to contribute to my Patreon, no sweat. I hope you just continue returning to this channel so we can have a fun time together. And if you would like to connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, links for all of those are available in the description section of this video as well. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell because I have more book reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope you have a great week and sweet nightmares.